Have a quorum, and it's 8:01, and we will begin our meeting, our 82nd meeting for those of you who are keeping track. We'll start off with introductions. We'll start off on my left with Britt. We'll do introductions.
Britt Stevens, NDSU.
Brad Olson, City of West Fargo.
Steve Lindos, City of Moorhead.
Kevin Hansen with Matt.
Sarah Watson-Curry, City of Moorhead.
Jim Austin, Stillwater City Council.
Jackie Maas, Concordia.
Annie Wood, MSUM.
Brian Arrett, Valley Senior Services.
Again, welcome everyone. We'll start off with our agenda items. First item on the action item is the November 2019 meeting minutes, and hopefully you've had a chance to review those, and if so, we would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
We have a first.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion's carried. All right, next up is action item 2B, the federal grant application for 2020 capital in Moorhead. Lori.
Thank you. At the October meeting, we talked about the grant application to the Minnesota Department of Transportation, and at that time, we had received notice from the state that we had received funding, and it was going to be state funding. However, when we actually got our final notice, what they intended was federal funding passed through the state. So in actual, we got federal 5339 funds for all of the capital projects that we applied to the state of Minnesota. So they passed through federal grant money. So the five projects that are being funded are listed on your memo. The Green Light Priority Project is in combination with the engineering department in Moorhead, where the green light will be held or come early depending on the emitters from the buses so that the buses can keep on time. And the facility support equipment has to do with LED lights in our facility and a diesel particulate filter. And then the purchase and installation of a small shelter that's at the courthouse in Moorhead to replace one that was put up in the 1980s. And then the Dilworth hub design and construction is the transfer point at the Dilworth Walmart. So all of those projects were included in the City of Moorhead's 2020 mass transit budget. But I just wanted you to make you aware of that. This does require a federal grant public hearing at the Moorhead City Council, and that has been scheduled for the next meeting on July 27th. January. Thank you, January 27th. I was just thinking warmth, you know. So the recommended motion is for the City Council to approve the application for the projects that are listed.
Questions for Lori?
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Okay, we have a first.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, next item is item 2C, which is the Route 4 alternatives for downtown shopping. Lori.
Okay, I'm opening up the PowerPoint. I put a terminology slide up there because I'm going to talk about inbound and outbound quite a bit, and I wanted to make sure you understood what I'm talking about since it's one of those transit terms that people don't always talk about. So when I say inbound, it means that the bus is coming into the ground transportation center where the transfers occur. When I say outbound, it's leaving the ground transportation center, and GTC is what we call the ground transportation center. The other place that you might not know about is Parkview Terrace, which is a low-income housing unit on First Avenue and 3rd Street in Moorhead. And so as we're talking about Route 4 in the downtown area, that's one of the facilities that it serves. So during the public information and public comment period for the LinkFM, changes to the LinkFM, we got comments about if LinkFM goes away, there are some things that it does that Moorhead buses don't do now. Is there a possibility that we could make some changes to make up for that? For example, we have an inbound to the GTC stop by the Comp Center, but we don't have an outbound one. So if someone wanting to come from a transfer at the GTC would have to ride all of Route 4 around to get to the Comp Center to get a ride, to be picked up and get a ride. So that was one of the issues that was brought up, and that there are no Moorhead bus stops on the Fargo side as the buses are going inbound to the GTC, except for the Ground Transportation Center, was another one of the comments that came up. So as we were looking at that and looking at changes and how Route 4 could adapt, these are the goals that we set, and that is there are certain services in downtown Moorhead that it's good to have a bus going by inbound and outbound because it makes the trip very quick, and you can make your transfers to other buses. And so the Comp Center, Parkview Terrace, the Moorhead Center Mall, and the downtown housing, the US Bank bus stop are the stops where we want to have a bus going to and from the GTC for a quick turnaround. The other thing is that the Route 4 bus is an hour-long bus route with 2 buses on it for 30-minute service. Is on a 60-minute bus route, we need at least 10 minutes of spare time to handle peak traffic and weather and things like that. Also, the shelter that the Link was using in the Moorhead Center Mall parking lot, if we were going to encourage people to still park in that area of the parking lot, whether or not we would keep that shelter or if we would put some bus stops close to the shelter on 7th Street where we travel. So those were pretty much the issues that we looked at. One of the things we thought about was changing Route 4 to be branded as a shopping connection. You know, Route 4 now serves Moorhead Center Mall, Target, Walmart, the East End Center, Shopping Center, and downtown. So it's one of our main routes for shopping, is whether or not we should rebrand that to pick up some of these pieces and sort of replace LinkFM as a shuttle for downtown. And then the last thing is the railroad crossings. We try to avoid railroad crossings on routes as much as we can, and at least no more than once do we cross the tracks if we can help it. Route 4 has crossing the tracks twice, and so we looked at whether or not we could improve that as one of our goals. So this is the existing map of Route 4 now. This is the full map. It's a long route, and so it's hard to tell where it all goes on this tiny little map. But as I said, it serves mostly shopping. So this is the part of the current route that goes downtown. And this is how it travels now. So it leaves the Ground Transportation Center outbound and goes on NP Avenue and Center Avenue in front of the Moorhead Center Mall. And on Center Avenue in front of the Moorhead Center Mall, it has 2 shelters, one that serves the mall and one that serves US Bank. And when I refer to US Bank, that would be a bus stop that people that live in the downtown would walk to go outbound to go shopping. So they would walk over to that US Bank shelter. And then it turns on 7th Street and heads over to First Avenue, where it continues to go down to 14th Street and make a loop by the courthouse and the Family Service Center. On its inbound trip to the GTC, then it comes back by the Moorhead Center Mall, serving the Moorhead Center Mall again for that inbound trip. And then it goes over and does Parkview Terrace, goes by the Comp Center, and comes back to the Ground Transportation Center. So the good things about the route as it stands now is it does serve the downtown housing and the Moorhead Center Mall, both inbound and outbound. Because it does travel on 7th Street, we could add a bus stop inbound and outbound on 7th Street, which is really close to where the shelter is for LinkFM now. So if we remove that shelter and put bus stops on 7th Street, that would serve, Route 4 could serve that piece. And if we wanted to, we travel on First Avenue in Fargo, there would be time to put a bus stop by the public library before we have to go into left-hand turn lane and pull into the Ground Transportation Center. The cons of this is that it doesn't serve the Comp and Parkview outbound, and it doesn't follow LinkFM through the downtown Fargo area. It just goes over to the Ground Transportation Center. So I came up with 4 options, and I know this is a lot to talk about, so I put some red pieces in there to kind of bring out the differences between them, because they might look very similar. So instead of taking Center Avenue outbound from the GTC, we would scoot over to First Avenue, and that way we could have a bus stop over by the UMCOM Center to drop people off. Route 1's option, the drop-off is not a very good option because we were in a right-hand turn lane to turn over to the Morehead Center Mall so we could serve US Bank. And so there is no crosswalk on that side of the street, so people would have to go, you know, in like across 3rd Street, then across First Avenue, back across 3rd Street to make it over to the UMCOM Center. So that's kind of the downfall of option 1, is that it's not a good bus stop, and there are no sidewalks on that side of the street. There is a sidewalk on First Avenue, but not on 3rd Street. So it's not a good crosswalk for that. And then if we went through the Morehead Center Mall parking lot to serve what LinkFM does now, we would no longer be going by US Bank. And so that would be another, an area that was a con to option 1. Option 2, again, we'd be doing the same thing where we scoot over to First Avenue and go by the UMCOM Center. On this one, though, we would go by the Parkview Terrace first, not on our way into the GTC, but outbound. And by doing that, we could stop on the north side of First Avenue as we're leaving the Parkview Terrace parking lot and make that a bus stop for the UMCOM Center. So it's just a short walk down the street to the UMCOM Center from there. So that's a pro to that. This would, again, follow LinkFM through the parking lot, and so it would not serve the US Bank downtown housing as good as we would like. So option 3, we have combined a couple of things, and that is, again, we're going outbound to the Parkview Terrace, so there's a good bus stop on the north side of First Avenue for the UMCOM Center. The real con to this one is the fact that Morehead is looking at changing Center Avenue and 4th Street and removing the traffic signal there and lining up 4th Street, or so it doesn't curve, so it's a straight shot, and by doing that, it means the bus will have to make a left-hand unprotected turn onto Center Avenue. So that's the con to this one. Otherwise, it doesn't follow the LinkFM route through the parking lot, but it does serve 7th Street inbound and outbound, so we could still serve that part of the parking lot. So that this one you'll see later, I have made as my preferred option because it does serve the downtown inbound and outbound. It serves Parkview inbound and outbound, and the UMCOM Center inbound and outbound, and it can pick up the link traffic on 7th. The only con is that lack of a traffic signal left-hand turn.
Quick question, Lori, will there be stop signs then on 4th Street and Center Avenue?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. So option 4 is picking up the full LinkFM Fargo portion. So we looked at option 3 and then just added the trek that LinkFM does on the Fargo side so that we could have more bus stops that Morehead would make before it got to the ground transportation center. And that way people would not have to wait for transfers in order to get elsewhere in Fargo, since the bus is on its way to the ground transportation center. The con on that one was that it really took too many minutes to do that. And we didn't feel comfortable that we had enough time to handle traffic and weather and things like that. It ended up being 50 minutes long, and that's without bus stops and loading passengers. And so that's a big con in this one, and so I'm not recommending that one. So I compared all of the options and put X's on the big pros and cons. Here's the good things that these will do, just so you could sort of see the comparisons for the inbound and outbound bus stops at all these major places that I said were part of our goals. Option 3 was the one that I felt was the preferred option, basically because Route 4 was too long, and the other ones didn't serve the Morehead downtown and didn't get all the UMCOM Center and Parkview in the inbound and outbound. So that's the preferred option. I wanted to show you where bus stops would occur on option 3. So you can see that the UMCOM Center now has, where it says inbound and there's a red star, that's the bus stop that's there now that says LinkFM on it. We would change out that sign to be just a regular bus stop sign. And then when the bus travels through the Parkview parking lot, it stops at the door of the parking lot. And then it also, as it leaves, can stop and drop people off on that corner where that outbound red star is. Also, when the bus is coming down Center Avenue by the mall inbound to the GTC, we could also put a bus stop at the end of the parking ramp where the stop sign is, because then people who are parking in the parking ramp could also pick up Route 4 to get over to the Uncom Center. So that would be where we would put new bus stops, potentially in the downtown area there. And the bus stop by the library, I just put a red star kind of by City Hall's parking area to give the bus enough time to get into the left-hand turn lane to turn on to Fifth Street to go over to the Ground Transportation Center, but that would be a potential bus stop. The distance, most of the people commenting were trying to get over to Broadway, and the distance from there to Broadway is further than the Ground Transportation Center to Broadway, so I'm not sure that it serves a lot of purpose to do that, but there might be people wanting to go into City Hall or the library or Case Plaza or some of the businesses that are in that area between the GTC and City Hall that would be able to use that without having to make a transfer. And then this is 7th Street, which runs between the Mord Center Mall parking lot and Wells Fargo. I was saying that, where the LinkFM shelter now is actually in the parking lot. If we're not driving through the parking lot, we would remove that shelter because it would no longer be serviced. And then we could put bus stops, both inbound and outbound, on 7th Street for the bus to stop and serve people who are parking in that part of the parking lot. So that's my recommendation, is that preferred, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Lori? Sure.
Just wanted to clarify, would we be having a public hearing on this change? Is it significant enough, just to kind of educate us on that process too? Is there a significant enough change to this route that it would merit a public hearing?
It would not merit a public hearing, but it would have council, go to council for approval. We usually have an informational meeting so people are aware of the changes and they can still submit comments to us, but it wouldn't necessitate a public hearing because we're not changing 25% or more of the route hours or the route that we're actually following.
That was the detail I wanted. Thank you, Lori.
Other questions? If not, Lori, I'm assuming you would need a motion to recommend to the city council then that the option 3 of the Park 4 or the Route 4 change. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I move to recommend option 3.
Okay, we have first.
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
I'll second.
Hearing none discussion, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Lori.
Okay, we'll move on to our agenda item 3, the informational items. First item is the 2020 marketing plan. Oh, I'm sorry. Lori, did you have one more?
Nope, one more.
One more. I'm sorry, Lori. Item number D, the selection of the evaluation team for the Fargo-Moorhead Mass Transit operational services.
Okay, so as we've talked about in the past, our contract with First Transit for operations of drivers and dispatchers expires at the end of 2020. The request for proposals process takes quite some time to actually put out a detailed request for proposals, get an evaluation of that, and select a contractor and have them, whoever they may be, ready to go by the 1st of 2021. And so we put together a draft timeline of how the process would go so that we would actually have an award in May so that we could know how much it would cost us as we plan the 2021 budget. And that's where the timeline was established, which means we need a draft RFP released by mid-February in order to accomplish that. Some of the areas of the RFP that are currently under discussion are whether or not the fixed route dispatchers should no longer be contracted to be part of the city of Fargo. We've also are looking at a different kind of contract. There is a transit management contract that works a little differently than what we have now. We need to review our insurance coverage, and we're moving staff we'll be moving staff to the newly remodeled GTC offices. And so part of the RFP is to tell them what offices and equipment they can use so that they don't put in a price to duplicate what we're offering them as a contractor. As the RFP process has an evaluation team that looks at the RFP before it is distributed, also evaluates all the proposals received, puts points to that evaluation, and makes a recommendation to council and commission on who the contractor should be. In the past, the MAT board has served, a few members of the MAT board have served on that evaluation team. It's a little bit of a commitment because there's a pretty lengthy RFP, and usually we interview 2 or 3 of the proposers and such. So I'm looking to see if any of you would be interested in serving on that committee.
I can serve.
Wonderful.
How many do you need? Well, how many do you think you need?
Last time, I think we had 2 or 3 people. Do you remember, Julie? I think it was 3.
Can you give more information on the time commitment?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just looking at the proposal, the RFP in the draft form, and then the evaluations, probably a whole day of interviews of the 3 companies or 2 or 3 companies that we think will put proposals in and selections. So it's a little bit of reading, but meeting-wise, it's probably only a day and another meeting, so.
I could tentatively join you.
And would it be helpful to have a representative from the colleges, do you think, too, on the committee, Lori? if
We have
possible?
had members of the colleges in the past, so that would be, yeah. If they have the time for that.
I know that I don't have the time to commit to it, so
Yeah, spring semester is probably the
worst
worst
time.
time.
I guess it's up to me.
There you go.
All right. Thank you, Britt. Appreciate that. We'll get back to you with more information and details as we move along.
And Lori, as far as, there's no more extensions, right? We used the extension last time, so
Right.
we're done. This contract has to be renewed, right?
Well, I mean, we could ask for a further extensions if there is a reason we needed that. I mean, the federal government would consider that if we have a real purpose for it. So,
Okay. So anybody else? Yes, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm assuming the review team would dig into this more, but I just wanted to know on a kind of a high level, the topic of moving fixed route dispatch from contracted services to City of Fargo, what that would look like for the employees. Would that be a pretty seamless transition? I'm assuming they're represented by Teamsters. Would they be represented by a different union? Just a brief snapshot of some of those logistics, if you happen to have them.
yes, I'm going to ask Matt to come and address that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the transition would actually be very seamless for them. With the construction project at GTC, we've actually kind of set it up long-term for us to be one organization and not have them as contracted employees. They are not currently under a union. They are staff. The drivers are, but not the fixed route dispatchers.
Okay.
And so we did a wage analysis and everything last year, compared it to like City of Fargo wages if we were to bring them into the City of Fargo. All of that was part of our budget for the last 2 years and gone through our PEC, position evaluation committee. So it would be, they wouldn't really tell a difference. It's just who's signing their paycheck. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We wanted to talk about that possibility now as we put together budgets and RFPs so that we're clear, so we don't have to have too many options and changes as we go out for bids. So, I mean, Fargo would have to consider whether or not they want to do that and make that kind of decision. But the benefits of taking the GTC dispatchers into the city rather than contracted is that those positions are our customer service facing, and they handle a lot of funds and things like that. It's just that we felt like there would be a better customer service piece to it if we had more control over it.
Other questions for Lori? You know, there is a recommended motion that you would like, Lori, in the bottom of your memo.
Yes, so we had 3 volunteers, so if we could make a motion to assign those 3 volunteers to the reevaluation committee, appreciate that.
So moved.
A first,
Second.
a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to the informational items. 3A, the 2020 marketing plan. Taryn.
Good morning.
Maureen.
So right now we are still somewhat in the middle of our process for doing our 2020 marketing plan. We decided to really reassess our approach to what we do for marketing with MatBus and move to a more holistic way of looking at it instead of just looking at doing the same promotions we do every year and doing the same approach to them every year. And that hasn't really been resulting in much of a difference in our ridership. Ridership is low overall throughout the nation, but we are trying to look at, with this new approach, seeing if we can boost it a little bit in our metro. Our major campaigns have been Get Your Can on the Bus, our Youth Pass, which is now a 90-day Youth Pass, Street Fair, Back to School, the I Go Eco Challenge, Try MatBus Week, and Quarter Days. We wouldn't necessarily be getting rid of these promotions. We may be switching up how they are run, or maybe time of year, or the exact procedure for them. But we also want to shift more of a focus to some specific goals. So I have those listed here below. The two main things we want to focus on are education and connection with the community. Education, there's a lot of things even our regular riders don't know. So they might not even know that we've had an app for many years, and that's a great resource on the go. So we want to focus on letting them know what is already available to them as they're riding. Also doing things like reminding them about policies, how designated bus stops work, what is your rider etiquette when you're on the bus, remember to have your fare ready, things like that. We would also like to start using videos more frequently, since that's a really great media that people are engaging with the most online these days. We would be looking at videos that would be ideally less than about 2 minutes long, focusing on a variety of topics, mostly educational probably at the start. Just a few examples there, like winter riding tips, that's a big one this time of year. Where do I stand when there's a snow pile in front of my bus stop? Things like that. We would also like to assess our website to make sure that it really is as easy to use as possible and as easy to find the information you really need essential to riding the bus. Also developing an FAQ page as a quick snapshot. We would like to maintain our digital marketing presence consistently throughout the year rather than just spurts during those promotions we're having. We would like to engage more personally with younger riders, maybe setting up programs or field trips throughout elementary schools, high schools, and college students. We'd also like to explore Instagram, since this is a very popular medium for social media. We're still trying to decide what the best approach to that is going to be and how we will manage that content, but would be a really exciting new venue for us. And something new and exciting is mobile ticketing, and that will be launching this year. We are still going to have lots of staff training coming up where we're learning about all the features that are available throughout this new system. That will be coming in when we get new fare boxes on all of our fixed route buses. And there will be an app that accompanies that. It will replace our current app and include all of those features we already have, like live bus tracking. But it will also include a best fare feature, which basically means, let's say you don't know how many times you're gonna ride throughout the day, you might spend that $1.50 to ride the bus. Well, then you take another trip, another $1.50. On that third trip, instead of being charged an additional $1.50, you will only be charged up to getting that $5 all day long unlimited bus pass. So once you kind of hit those thresholds, it will reduce your payments so that you're getting the best fare value for your rides. So once you hit that threshold for the month, maybe the rest of your month's rides are free as part of that unlimited ride pass you basically paid for already. So we're really looking forward to getting that education on what we can do, and some of those features are going to be phased in throughout the year as we learn about them and have time to implement them. We are still working on our specific budget distribution and still kind of considering whether or not we want to contract out any of those marketing tasks. This past year, we did contract for some of our digital marketing, ad placement, some of our designs, some things like that. And as Lori mentioned before, and I'm sure you're familiar with, LinkFM as of January 1st is no longer a daily bus route. So one of our other fun marketing pushes for this year is going to be really making sure people are aware of the change to LinkFM and what events they can use it for. So in December, when the council and the commission agreed to the budget, there were specific events approved that are listed below. The first couple coming up are the Unglued Craft Fest in late February and Frostable. There's going to be Frozen Fortress at the Yumcomst, which will be a day-long period of activities, all focused at the Yumcom Center. So we will be operating service for that as well. Part of this is we will be putting up those temporary bus stops for each event, and we will be running the same route as LinkFM was running in 2019, and just working to partner with each event organizer to make sure we're promoting the route as best we can. And then throughout the year, we do partner with many organizations throughout the cities. A lot of these events, we're setting up a booth so that we can hand out information, speak to the public. Some of these things listed might be just providing free ride coupons, like we do for Cuts for Kids or Homeless Veterans Stand Down. And some of these we may be bringing a bus to an event, like the Fargo Police Community Picnic. Yeah, and that is our overview for 2020 so far.
Hey, questions for Taryn?
Taryn, when you're thinking about the focus on education, it sounds kind of like you're thinking a lot about the how, but have you thought about bringing in the why? From working with some of our students on campus, that's some of the questions I think that they have is like, well, why should I bother when I could take any number of other options that might be quote unquote more convenient?
Yeah, definitely. That is something we have done a couple of kind of smaller campaigns with in the past, like a winter riding campaign that we did a couple of years ago, which focused on, why to ride in the winter. We don't have to start your car, don't have to drive on icy streets. So yeah, that is definitely another factor to it.
Certainly, and as we've worked with some of our students, I think one of the things that they get excited about is that ecological impact, and so I'd encourage you to just think about that as you're working on your campaigns. It's helping
definitely
educate people on that, the carbon offsetting, or kind of pushing some of that type of information. It seems like, especially given all the things happening around the world, that's where a lot of our young people are focusing, is some of those things, and that might help you tap into that younger ridership.
Yeah, that is something that we focus on during our Get Your Can on the Bus, which happens during Earth Week every year. But we like to focus on bringing that going eco piece in throughout the year as well.
I think that's a good idea. Maybe even a focus group with some of the younger riders, just how to connect with them, what kind of social media do they use, what would be some messages that they would like, and I like the idea of engaging with them. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and we will be sending out our college ridership survey pretty soon here once the classes get back in session, and it is going to include some of those questions. Where have you seen our messages? Do you follow us? Do you ride with us? If you don't, why don't you? Things like that. And we do also have our transit development plan process coming up soon, which is going to involve a lot of soliciting feedback from the public, getting that feedback so we can develop our next 5-year plan.
Any other questions for Taryn? Okay, thank you for your part, Taryn.
Thank you.
Next item is 3B, the 2020 fuel bids update. Jordan.
Good morning. So every 6 months, City of Fargo goes out for fuel bids for City of Fargo Public Works, and then transit is included in that. That's for our diesel and our unleaded fuel. And We do this 6 months in advance, so we try to get the best pricing we possibly can. So if you look at last year, we came well within budget, over $820,000 budget for diesel fuel for transit. And we saved about $173,000 over what value or market price was basically at the pump price. So it is a big advantage for us to do this, to get best pricing we can. So the end of the month here, we will going out for bids for third and fourth quarter for 2020. First and second quarter, as it says there, came in about $2.09 a gallon. So that puts us right in line with last year. So barring any huge price increase for third and fourth quarters of 2020, we should come again well within budget. So any questions on that?
Questions for Jordan?
Who won? Who was the successful bidder?
For first and second quarter, it was Heartland Fuel Products.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is 3C, the 2019 incident reports.
Actually, 3C is part of 3E. Didn't realize it got listed on there twice. It's all part of the operations report. Oops, sorry.
Sorry.
Got it.
Sorry. Got in your way. As we do each year, we come up with a list of all the things we've achieved, so you can see what all was done throughout the year. And so that we can see, that's why we've worked so many hours. We've got all these things done, and we gotta blow our own horn once in a while. So equipment-wise, Moorhead had 2 large transit diesel vehicles ordered, and those will be delivered in January of 2020. They take a little over a year to build, and so we're looking forward to getting those any day now. And we also purchased 3 replacement senior ride vans for the Moorhead Dilworth service, and 1 replacement paratransit bus, which we have received and will be putting into service here shortly. And then Fargo has gotten a new transfer van and an expansion tap ride Ford vehicle. I put a picture of the tap ride up there because I think it's so pretty.
It's a very different vehicle than what we're used to. We used it for tap ride expansion in the NDSU campus. It seats 14 people, I believe. It has a wheelchair lift in the back. It's a little bit easier on gas, smaller vehicle. So we thought we'd give it a try.
What's the price on that vehicle?
Jordan, was it 55? 55,000.
We also purchased some jointly purchased equipment for the shop, forklift and some mobile lifts. And we awarded the upgrade to the fare collection system with these new features like Taryn was mentioning, mobile ticketing, best fare, the new customized app, wireless download of data. And we also are moving our old fare box system into the paratransit fleet and adding mobile ticketing to the paratransit fleet as well. We implemented the new MAT Pass with Rider ID. We won the APTA Grand Award for our television commercial Abandoned Cars. And we redesigned the ramp for LinkFM due to retiring the previous vehicle, which now we'll be removing the ramp from LinkFM. And then we updated our FM Ride Source brochure. We did make some changes to some routes. Route 4 was changed to avoid the Highway 10 frontage road turn on to 34th Street over by Target because that left-hand turn was very difficult to make and may in the future, well, it's not even being allowed anymore. So we knew that was coming, and so we made that change. Again, LinkFM was modified, and so it's only covering certain events. And then
Fargo Industrial Park started August 5th, 2019. It's been in service for just under 6 months now. It's been performing pretty well, actually, for being a brand new route. So we're pretty happy with that.
And then Senior Ride asked us to approve a start 10 minutes earlier than we had listed in our contract to get people to 8 o'clock appointments. So we made that change as well. Shelters and facilities.
So the GTC project did go out for bid, and we should be receiving those bids here I believe next week is bid opening. We're hoping to start construction finally on the interior of the GTC mid to end of February at the latest. Generally going to be about a 10 to 11 month project, redesigning that GTC so that we have better staff offices and working environment, and then a little bit better passenger flow to get to and from the routes. So we're getting kind of excited about that. Just we've been in the planning stages now for 2-3 years, kind of been taking it piece by piece, and now we're finally getting to where we can maybe start seeing some of the walls come down and new ones get put up. We did order 10 replacement shelters in Fargo. These shelters were very different than what we've ordered in the past. There's a picture of it in the bottom right corner there. All of them came with solar lighting so that at night in the wintertime, this is our third attempt of solar lighting. We actually put this one up right outside our MTG offices so that we can keep an eye on it, see how those solar lighting panels are working. And so far, they're working fairly well. It is, like I said, a little different design. It's only 3-sided. We're using mesh. People tend to break the glass in our glass shelters, which gets very costly. And so we are experimenting with kind of a mesh to break down the wind so it's not as cold, has a roof over their head. So we'll see as we keep implementing those throughout the area. Installed shelters on 10th Street North with the Fargo NDDOT project as well. Those were actually kind of nice. Those were no cost to us. NDDOT came through and we did 10th Street, put in some shelters for us, so they put those in for us as well, so we added those shelters.
Personnel and training, our personnel had some committee participation that was beyond our normal committees that we participate on. I, as the Moorhead Transit Manager, served on Region 4's Regional Transportation Coordination Council and the MnDOT Transit Advisory Committee. And Fargo's Transit Director, Julie, served on the APTA Small Ops Committee and the APTA Marketing and Communications Committee, Metro Grow, and the Transportation Forum held in Fargo. And then staff changes, we hired a new Fargo planner, Cole Swingen. And our first transit, we hired our new general manager, which you guys have met, Joseph Rivera, and promoted Lisa Hoos to our operations manager. And then for paratransit, our lead reservation position was reclassified to an operations supervisor in December. Training-wise, we attended many workshops and conferences in order to keep up on all of the federal and state regulations and requirements for the new safety plan, and attended APTA, the American Public Transit Association, conferences and workshops. So there were various training that we attended, and you can see that listing there. And then Sean Crowell, our mobility manager, was awarded the Distinguished Service Award by the Freedom Resource Center for Independent Living. Studies. We are continuing to work on the Transit Authority study through MetroCog with SRF and AECom as our consultants. So we actually have a meeting on that, I think, today. So we're continuing to work on that. And then also we completed an analysis of Moorhead's new service expansion 2-year pilot program and continued those route changes into 2020.
Any questions on the achievements report before we move on? Okay. All right. So this is where, and I apologize again, C and E were combined. We put everything into one operations report just to kind of make it a little bit easier for you guys to understand what we're talking about, hopefully. So here's our year-to-date ridership numbers. Currently, Moorhead for 2019 had about just over 25%, Fargo 71, and paratransit is 2.84. So you would look at that in comparison. Paratransit is a very small portion of what we do, yet it has one of the largest impacts because it's very costly for us. Those percentages translate into the numbers down below, just under 500,000 for Moorhead, and those are individual passenger trips. Fargo 1.3 million, and then about 53 thousand in paratransit. Our ridership this year is down slightly, down about 6.71%. We saw a decrease in both Fargo and Moorhead service. Paratransit, there was a slight increase, about 1.3%, which is manageable. Preferably, we like to see the decrease in paratransit and the increase on the fixed road side of things. However, with the wonderful weather we had in 2019, especially early on, we had a lot of route cancellations, a lot of storm detours, a lot of days that just were very difficult, to say the least. And then this is our ridership by route. Now, I will send this out to you guys later in PowerPoint. I apologize, I was going to print this and hand it out to you, and got distracted yesterday afternoon and completely spaced it out. So I will get this information out to you so you guys have a copy that you can look through. This ridership by route in Fargo, Route 11, going through 2018-2019 comparison, change of 1%. All the percents are down there for you guys to kind of take a look at and see. Some of the more notable ones, Route 13 being down 12%, that's really in line with our NDSU routes. NDSU is down about 11% for our college ridership, and that's a very large NDSU route. 13U up 3%, 13U, 13, essentially the same route, just about a half hour, a little bit of timing difference really. And then Route 18 is down 10%. That route underwent a large change in the middle of 2018, where it went from a 30-minute route to a 90-minute route. And so we're not real surprised to see that ridership down. We're hoping to see that start to bounce back and increase because it is servicing quite a bit more. And then, of course, all of the NDSU ridership there on the bottom. NDSU Tap Ride, I thought was interesting. That is up 3%, and that's our late night service on the NDSU campus. We replaced Route 35 January 1st of 2018 with that route, and we're seeing that it's still very successful. Students really seem to like it. They're able to get that curb to curb or door to door service up on campus when it gets really dark at night and in the winter time.
So in Moorhead, again, we did have some route decreases across the board. Route 1 serves Concordia College, Route 2 MSUM, Route 3 also serves MSUM and M-State. And Route 4 is our shopping route that we were talking about making some changes to. Route 5 serves south of I-94, Route 6 is in Dilworth, and Route 9 is in southeast Moorhead by Sanford, Menards, in that area. So we did have decreases at ridership, but again, a lot of service cancellations due to weather. And we are looking at the college ridership with our survey to try to improve some of that.
UPass ridership, so through each of the colleges, Concordia, M-State, MSUM, NDSU, and NDSCS, those are kind of the totals that we're at right now. That blue section up top there is...
fiscal year.
Yeah, fiscal year, thank you. And then, so you'll basically see this slide again here in about 6 months once we complete the academic year. It's always fun when we're working with colleges because you guys go on an academic year, we go on a calendar year, so we start splitting things and it looks a little bit funny and then we get lost. But overall, we can kind of see that trend with the college ridership. We know that it's trending down slightly. Concordia had an increase, which is great. Those big decreases with M-State, MSUM, hopefully that college ridership will give us some insight into what's going on there and we can correct that path. This would be our customer type. We always like to review our ridership and customer type. So again, all of these numbers are pretty much the exact same thing. It's just different ways that we go in and take a look at it. These are not final numbers. I do want to throw that out there. We always go through and we scrub the data. We generally find, different things throughout it. So these are not final numbers that we're going to post in our NTD, but they're very close. They're probably within 200-300 rides. So with this one, we see, a decrease of about 1.7% in the adult ridership and college ridership down about 13%, elderly down about 1.2%, but then disabled, youth, and child are all up. What that tells us is, this year we really focused on our youth pass, promoting that. That seems to be successful to us. Our youth and child ridership is up. Well, youth mostly, child is, and so now going into 2020 with our marketing plan, looking at the college survey that's going out, that's where we're going to address that elderly, adult, and college ridership and see if we can get those numbers to go the other way. Revenue hours. Oh, and that missing December 18 hours should not be on there. I apologize. So with revenue hours, this is where we go through, and every scheduled revenue hour that we have throughout the entire year, we go in and we do a comparison year to year to see where we're at. This is where we can really tell that, you know, with that ridership dropping that 6.7%, we have, you know, a change of about 1.5% in our fixed route revenue hours. That leads to that natural decrease in ridership. We're out there less hours, we're going to have less riders, right? In paratransit, we had quite an increase in hours, 5.59%. Again, that's the number we always want to see negative, because that's the expensive service. And then vehicle revenue miles, again, it's another one of those comparisons that we use for that ridership. Why is ridership down? Well, our vehicle miles are down, our revenue hours are down. We know we're going to have a natural downslide in the ridership on there. And then rides per hour. With rides per hour, we always like to go in and take a look. Now, we actually do a comparison for every route, for how much ridership on every route versus how many hours. And then we total that all up. And so I broke it out for Moorhead, Fargo, and a total here for you. In Moorhead, you can see that in 18 they had a slightly higher rides per hour, and same in Fargo. Again, that's all based on our ridership for the years and how many revenue hours that we're operating out there. But we do like to track that and make sure that we're keeping those numbers pretty consistent. All in all, 16.13 rides per revenue hour that we have out there is good. We consider anything over 10 on an individual route to be the average. And so when we see that the entire system is operating at 16.13, that tells us it's okay. We'd like to see it better, but it's there. And then paratransit, we went down in rides per hour. And this is, it kind of reminds me of accounting, when you can't ever tell if the number is supposed to be positive or negative. That's how paratransit is. So we see a negative number here, but we actually want to see that one positive, because the more rides per hour that we have, the better or the more efficient the service is going to be. Social media, just kind of a quick graph to kind of show you what's going on. Green being 2018, blue being 2019. All of our social media has really taken off. Going back to what Taryn was talking about with the marketing strategy for 2020, we're really seeing that social media piece be our best investment, really, whether it be the Facebook photos, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube videos, our website, the app. So we're up, for 2019, we're up a little over 200% in social media, which is a pretty large jump. And then our call logs per year, or our call logs, excuse me. This is for both the Ground Transportation Center and the MTG. The more information we put out on social media, the more information we put out on our website, we take it as a positive if less calls come in. And in this case, we have 21.46 less phone calls for the entire year, which is great. You consider we do about 4,000 phone calls a month. That's a pretty significant number. And here is where we get into C for the incidents. Because we track almost everything in what we call our feedback system, I only put the top 6 complaints in here, categorize them. So there's a bunch of other ones in here that you won't see. There, 1 or 2 here and 3, whatever the case may be. So this is just the top 6 for you guys to kind of take a look at. And then we broke them out and substantiated. Did they happen? Did they not happen? Unsubstantiated. Other is one of those, we don't know what to do with this, so we're going to stick it in another category because it's not really substantiated, but it's not really wrong. Might be something that we have to refer off to the contract manager to take a look at. Maybe we have to develop a policy for it. Just who knows. And then unclassified is someone sent in a random complaint, we put it in the system, and there was no classification for it. So looking at this, we can see that employee behavior is the #1 complaint that we get throughout the system. What I thought was really interesting was, 29 of the 103 employee behavior complaints were substantiated. So about 30% of them really. When we get those complaints that come in, it's interesting to read how people have a perception of what happened versus when you watch the video and you see what actually happened. You know, hindsight being 2020, you can really see how they get from, you know, getting on board the vehicle, everything's fine, to now I'm going to call in a complaint just because the way the interactions happen, what's said, you know, gestures, any of that type of stuff.
Oftentimes, it's a policy or a rule that the driver's trying to explain, and the passenger just doesn't really want to hear it.
Yeah,
That's
a lot
often.
of times that can happen. Yep. Unsafe driving, those, you know, we get quite a few of those as well. They're pretty 50-50 when we see those come through, whether it's, you know, the vehicle running a red light, going over a curb, speeding, policy issue, ahead of schedule, behind schedule, off route. They're all just kind of up there. And then the complaint summary on the bottom. All in all, we had 461 total complaints for the entire year, from January to December. 166 of those were substantiated, meaning that we felt that they were legitimate complaints, whether the employee was disciplined or training was done or whatever the case might be. So that's about 36%, and then 35 unsubstantiated, and the remaining fall in that other weird category that we can't really explain. Moving into the incident reports, we really track, well, like I said before, we track everything. So again, I'm showing you the top 6 reported incidents. Fall and injury is always the one that's scariest to us. Anytime that someone gets on board a vehicle and they fall, they're getting off the vehicle, they're walking to a bus stop, whatever the case may be, there's that potential injury. And so we really like to track those quite a bit. So it doesn't surprise me that they're on here as the #1 incident that was reported. Designation I should probably, or a clarification I should probably make is complaints are typically always generated by our passengers. Incidents are typically always generated by our drivers or our employees, whether it's a dispatcher or something like that. And that's why you see the substantiated, unsubstantiated, all that information is the same. So these fallen injuries are usually drivers reporting that someone fell or had an injury on board their vehicle, a policy issue like Lori was stating, you know, a passenger was violating a policy, they tried to explain it. A lot of times the incidents will generate a complaint as well. We can usually mirror them or marry them up. Passenger behavior, emergency services, we've seen a bit of an increase in, whether it's, you know, needing to call ambulance or medical professionals out to a route or at the GTC. Not sure really what that is. We usually see an increase in that with the cold weather a lot.
We have passengers that are just not, they're not conscious. You know, they get to the ground transportation center, they're not getting off the bus, they're not reacting.
Yeah.
Or we have people that would take to detox and things like that. So emergency services are often an illness or just someone was drinking too much, passed out on the bus kind of circumstance.
What this one here, when we look at the substantiated incidents, 57%, so quite a bit higher substantiated, and then quite a bit lower unsubstantiated. Again, coming from our employees who have been trained to recognize what's going on, that makes perfect sense. But then we get a higher other because something doesn't seem right here. I'm going to report it. They should have reported it, but we just don't know where to put it. So these are the other feedback items that we do track, or the other items that we track through our feedback system, I should say. So compliments, bus stop requests, public hearing, and event policy issues. The event policy issue was a request for a route change, is what that one was. We had about 49 compliments come through, which is fantastic. We love seeing compliments come in. And then bus stop requests. With our bus stop only policy that we implemented last year, we have a way for passengers to request that a bus stop be added or removed, changed. And so that's what all of those requests are. And then instead of giving you a blank page, I did add missed trips on here as well. Missed trips being one of the things that we do need to pay very close attention to for our NTD reporting or our National Transit Database reporting. We get used to acronyms. So the missed trips in Fargo, weather being the #1 issue in 2019. We already discussed that a little bit. Just under 300 missed trips due to weather alone. That's probably
Majority.
Huh?
It's the majority.
It is, yeah, it is the majority. Then we have other driver error, dispatch error. Those ones really could be together. Typically what those are is if a driver doesn't show up for a shift in the morning or in the afternoon, and then the dispatcher doesn't catch it, or the dispatcher sends someone home. There is no good excuse for that, so we do track that, and we work with our contractor to try and minimize as many of those as possible.
And we find them.
Yeah, we do find them, yes. So I wanted to put this on there just because you look at some of those numbers and you think, wow, that's a lot. We had a total of 514 missed trips for the entire year of 2019. That's less than 1% of our scheduled trips for the entire year. So yes, 300 missed trips due to weather seems like a large number. 42 missed trips because 42 people didn't show up. When we're talking about 80 people reporting for work a day, that's still not good, but it's understandable. So I wanted to give you guys some information on that. And then moving into our mechanical log, broke this down by city. It doesn't really need to be because, with Fargo, West Fargo, Moorhead, Dilworth, we kind of intermix the fleet anyway. But I thought I'd break it down by city just because if you happen to be driving past it in your city and you see a bus broke down, you're wondering what's going on. These are the top issues that we're having. Now, fare box issues, the good thing is we are getting new fare boxes. They actually have arrived. They'll be getting installed here probably the beginning of February. And then we'll have a 12-month process of training and implementing new features on the fare box. Our vendor, GenFare SPX, was very adamant that we don't start implementing new features on the fare boxes right away. We need to do that in steps because people are going to get on, they're going to see a new fare box, and they're going to be automatically confused. So they kind of gave us this 7 to 12 month plan of, we'll start with just getting the equipment on, and then we'll start with this type of a pass, and then work into mobile ticketing. So we don't have the schedule as to when we're going to do each of those yet, but just so you guys know, it will be a full 12-month implementation. Hopefully, that will reduce the amount of fare box issues we have for mechanical problems. Driver issue, the majority of those are stuck in the snow. We've had quite a few of those lately, and then whether or not the driver feels that there might be something wrong with the vehicle and they're just being safe rather than being sorry, so they radio it in and the shop comes out and takes care of it. System failure type is something that we do have to look at and report on our NTD reporting. So there's 3 categories for that. I put the definition under there for each of you just because. Major basically is like something happened mechanically to this vehicle and it stopped working. We weren't able to control that route. So we only had 26 of those for the 2019 year, which is not horrible considering how many vehicles we put out there every day. Other is, again, something happened, but the vehicle was able to continue, but because of our own policy or because of a state policy, such as a headlight being out, we replaced the vehicle. And then NA, most of those are biohazard issues. Unfortunately, we have a lot of biohazard issues, and those don't always make it into our feedback report. So biohazard was on one of the previous slides in the feedback system. However, we get a lot of them. So, and then our collisions, comparison from 2018 to 2019, preventable collisions stayed the same, which I thought was really interesting. We had a really tough January, February in 2019. Non-preventable collisions up 195%. Non-preventable means that we've pretty much ruled what our employee had done out of the picture. Most non-preventables are a rear ending, a side swipe, a brick falling off a building and hitting one of our vehicles. And then insignificant, with the size of our vehicles and some of the areas they go into, a lot of times it's not uncommon for them to hit like a bus stop sign with their mirror, or they might tap the bumper on the stanchion at the GTC. So we consider those insignificant because it's very minimal damage. You can, spit shine it up and rub the scuff off. So that's what we do with the insignificant ones. We don't want to hold drivers. We want to hold them responsible, but sometimes, you're driving down the road, you have a choice of hitting a construction cone and putting a scratch on a bus or hitting a car. I much rather they hit the construction cone, right? And so that's where we come in with that insignificant category. We have a lot of really good drivers out there that do a great job. All right. Questions?
Questions for Matt Laurie? Matt, can you talk a bit about the weather-related closings? Is that, is it an all or nothing type of thing where, in other words, you know, how do you make that call? Is it based on what you're getting feedback from the city plows? And is there any major routes you can keep open, or is it just all or nothing kind of?
Yeah, that's a great question. It changes every time we get a weather event, it seems like. So generally speaking, what we do whenever we see that there is some sort of significant weather coming in, we always work with the public works departments on both sides of the river. Lori calls the Moorhead side. Jordan, Julie, or I will talk to the Fargo side. Typically, Jordan does. Public works usually gives us that like first level. We think we're going to be able to get the roads cleared, and you're not going to have an issue. Or, you know, we might be a little bit delayed. Your buses might be running a little bit late, but they should be able to get through. That's really where their role comes in. And both of our public works departments are really good about that. When Public Works tells us we can't guarantee you're going to get your routes through, that's when we seriously consider closing. If Public Works can't keep the roads clean, you know, we're talking more than just the emergency routes, right? Because a lot of our routes go out on different roads. We also have the paratransit side of things. So our fixed route vehicles, which stay out on main roads and don't go into a lot of parking lots or a lot of neighborhoods, our paratransit fleet goes into all kinds of those neighborhoods. And so usually what you'll see is that paratransit will get shut down prior to fixed route being shut down. But we do make it a collaborative effort between Fargo and Moorhead, talking with both Public Works. We talk with our city administration, and then we make a decision to what we feel is the best. We're not always 100% correct. We've made the decision to close before and the sun has come out. But, you know, this last weather-related incident that we had no choice. 3 feet of snow, there was no way our vehicles are going through there. So did that answer your question? Sorry.
There's also the issue of the drivers needing to get to their bus too. And so a lot of our bus drivers live in apartment buildings that their snow hasn't been cleared, and so it's difficult for them to get to work. So this last storm, we started Monday at 12:15. So we started later. Originally, we were going to start at 10:15, but the Public Works departments asked us to start even later because of all of the streets that still needed to be cleaned. So we're in communication with them on a regular basis.
Thank you.
We also have storm routes. We do decrease our routes. We have storm routes ready to post where we know where there's a lot of drifting areas or where we have trouble getting through, where we'll take a route and decrease the route and not run certain areas of it. And we can implement those route by route. And so we did do some of that with this last storm as well.
We did not run Route 24, which was unfortunate because it's out to the hospital, but we weren't able to run it.
And we had to make a detour on Route 3 that runs by the high school because 4th Avenue had 7-foot drifts and 3 cars stuck on it that you couldn't get through. So, yeah, we're making adjustments route to route as well.
Other questions? Okay. Just the last item, you had some articles you would like us to take a look at, Lauren?
Well, I just put them in there for information for those
purposes?
of you who are interested in that kind of information. We've been, the Uber and Lyft part of the world is growing and becoming more and more popular. Part of that is that the more individual vehicles dropping people off, the more traffic control issues. And so there's some interesting articles on what cities are doing to try to correct that. And then just on the autonomous vehicles in the future and where they see that going and things like that. So I just threw them in there for information.
Okay, any other information or other business from the board?
I have one item.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I don't know if we want to discuss this now and provide direction for staff or add it to a future agenda item, but I just wanted to go on record. I had reached out to appreciate that we're able to host the meetings here, but I really do miss the ability to interact a little more closely with staff. And as this is a multi-jurisdictional venture, it's a really great opportunity for us to strengthen those relationships. So there isn't a lot of flexibility in the physical space here for us to be closer connected. According to staff, they've got it laid out due to staffing reasons and the way they want to capture things digitally. So I just wanted to put that out there and say that if that's something we're wanted to provide direction for staff or explore at a future meeting, I really value this opportunity for us to provide education together and and see how we can build a stronger system. So I just wanted to voice that, and I also just, say I appreciate the use of the space, but just wanted to make sure that we're using it the most effectively to move MapBus forward. So that's it.
Any other thoughts on Sarah's comments? If not, maybe we at a future meeting, we could kind of have a discussion of just some options for us. I know that the ability for the public to hear the meetings is important too, but we can maybe take a look and see what other options are out there for us.
I appreciate it.
Okay, we can certainly do that. Any other business or questions? Okay, hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.